Hello and welcome to the Alpha Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick, VP of Product Management here at Alpha Software, and I'm pleased to be joined by Alpha expert Dion McCormick, no relation. Today, Dion is going to be continuing his presentation, putting together an app, but we're also here, of course, to answer your questions. After all, it is a Q&A webcast. You could type those questions into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. So let's get started. Hello, Dion, are you there?
Yes, I am. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter.
Okay, cool.
Let you know when I can see your screen. And there it is.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a continuation of our conversation on building mobile apps using the Alpha Anywhere platform. We want to say thank you for taking time out of your valuable schedule and coming visiting us. We're here for you. This actual whole presentation was out of a question of a client of Alpha's, and they had some questions, and I said, hey, let's put together a little, 1, 2, 3 kind of scenario from beginning to end. So today what we're going to do is focus on reviewing what we did before real quick, just to make sure we're level set, especially for people who didn't join us before, and then really talk about deployment options and show you one of the coolest deployment options out there, AlphaLaunch. So with that, what I'd like to do is first make sure, as Dave said, we're here to answer your questions. So if you have questions during the presentation, please jump into the question area of the GoToWebinar control panel. Put your questions in there. We'll be glad to grab them. Handle if we can't handle them today. We always try and follow up and make sure you get that answer you're looking for. And then also, if you have other questions, we'll have a little time at the end where we can kind of cover and see if we can help any other kind of questions that are out there. So with that, again, thank you so much. So first, what we want to do is real recap. We created a basic task manager. Everything was done inside of Alpha. And as we mentioned, we'll enhance it over a few sessions. And the key technologies that were being used was the mobile design features of the Alpha Anywhere platform, which includes panel cards, panel navigators, layouts, control bars, and menus. And the first 2 sessions was basically setting up the basic app and then turning it into a mobile app, i.e. mobile optimized, meaning responsive and able to run nicely in a web browser on a mobile device. And it does that very nicely. But then we wanted to go ahead and say, hey, well, how do we get this out to the field and preserve a lot of capabilities? And actually, more importantly, unlock a lot of capabilities. So before I jump into that, I want to talk about my next steps, but let's go back into it. And let's go in here. So as we set up originally, the original way we set this up for this mobile app, and let me go ahead and open it up and show you what it looks like real quick. Should have had that open there. It's waking up. Come on, wake up. Sleep. Okay. We were frozen down in Texas for a couple days, so everything's kind of falling off still. So pretty crazy. So we'll have working preview. Course, there we go. Okay, there we go. Vertical. Let's go vertical here. So it's a very straightforward app. Basically, you had a task list here, and then you could go over here and look at the details, edit those details. It used all the features of a mobile device, meaning nice transitions, showing certain data on here. It also included the ability to scan over and do searches and other pieces like that. So I could go over and do a search and other pieces. So we kind of got to the point where we had the basic functioning element of the app together. We had the control bar up here. We had the actual editing form here. We included also some navigation things, so it makes it easier for people to navigate. And there are other ways we could optimize that from there. But it's basically a pretty straightforward application in terms of just being able to add actions to a list. Now, very important, when we originally set this up, we set this up using the SQL tools that were built into it. So we basically use the SQL tools. Let me go over here. Go to my SQL tools. I think are on here. Where I always like lose them there. There it is, right there. So in here, we created a SQL Light Database. We edited it, we modified it. See, notice right here, and we put those things together. Now that works fine in kind of a development stage and other pieces, but I need this to be able to work out in the universe. So one of the key things I wanted to do, and I had to do before I kind of took the next step to make it available outside of my little domain here, was to convert that into an off-the-shelf SQL or SQL-oriented database. And as what's wonderful about Alpha, if I go to the TA connection strings, Alpha supports an enormous number of core technologies, MySQL, MariaDB, Oracle, SQL Server, etc. So you have a wide range of solutions to pick up. And so I kind of looked at the situation. I said, listen, this app is going to be out in the world. It's going to actually, and I'll talk a little more detail about that. The actual backend will be on Alpha Cloud because it's all easy to do. But I needed a database. Now, Alpha Cloud does have a database capability, but it's really only used for test and development. I mean, it's really not meant to be your full-fledged database. It was added in there to support developers to be able to quickly put together prototypes and proof of concepts and testing and things like that. But you really want to set up and use an industrial string database there. So I had a couple different options. I could go ahead and spin up something on Azure or AWS. That works great, fabulous. But I came across a pretty cool solution that actually is a Postgres solution. I'm not sure if I think it's called I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's Postgres is the way I call it. But it's an industry standard database. It's fully SQL compliant. It's very, very, very popular in the development environment because it has a lot of really cool, nice features built into it, easy to use, etc. So I said, hey, I want to go ahead and use that. I want to make it easy. So I came across a solution out there, and I've been using it fairly recently, is a company called bit.io. So let me go to bit.io. Let's see if I can just go to the home screen here. Oh, it's going to go to the dashboard, but it's a service. They have a free tier, which I really like here. And basically it is a cloud-hosted database solution. So what you can do is it's basically a Postgres server, and on there you can create tables, you can import data. One thing that's really nice is you can actually click upload, put in a CSV file, Excel or JSON, and it'll create a table for you right there. And it's all server compatible, meaning it's out on the end, so I can hit this from anywhere in the world. And again, it uses industry standard Postgres, so it works very nicely. And it works very nicely. Oops, sorry, let's go over here. Inside here, so I was able to use my connection string. So let's go ahead and look at that. So before, remember if you saw before, this was you can see that it was a SQL Light Database, DB. But then when I went ahead and I basically migrated that up to bit.io by basically exporting and importing it into bit.io. And now if I go into my profile here and go into my connection string up on the server connection bit is Postgres. So what was nice is I kind of can play with SQL Lite. I can do that. It's up to you, but it's all built into it. So you can see what I did is I said, hey, for publishing and using outside the world, I'm going to create a connection string where I'm going to use it with Postgres SQL. It's going to go to the server, the bit.io, and then they give you all the credentials and other things like this. You'll notice that the password here is secure. It actually encodes it. So if in case anybody gets your files, they won't know what it is. And it does those pieces there. So it took me all of 3 minutes to set up this connection string. One thing that's really nice about it is since I had the same database structure, I really didn't have to change any of my actual user interface code. I just pointed it at that database and said, now use that database. Made life very, very simple. So basically, again, just real quick, I went ahead and moved up my tasks table that was in my SQLite up here to the server. I then got the connection string. You can click connection string and it'll give you all the connection string information on how to access this database. I basically went in here to my environment, opened up and set up my named AlphaDIO connection string, set it up, built it, tested it, and off to the races, I was good to go. So I didn't actually have to go in and make a bunch of changes in my app. And that's one of the cool things about Alpha Anywhere is that you don't have to make a lot of changes. It's really database agnostic, meaning it kind of, as long as you're kind of using generic off-the-shelf SQL technology, SQL statements, etc., you really don't have to worry about different types of databases. You can move along there. Now, if you start using database-specific features, native language elements, things like stored procedures, yeah, you're going to have a migration issue at that time. But again, we'll keep it simple, and I kept it to plain vanilla SQL, and off to the races I went. So step one, I had built my app, got it all working nicely. Step two, I went ahead and I went and deployed it to the server. I migrated it up to bit.io. And again, I just want to confirm that, sorry, I keep jumping over there. This is free. They have a free tier. And their pricing is pretty good. If you have like a really low volume database, it's super inexpensive. They do it off of number of queries versus having to pay a monthly fee or things like that. And again, they have all the detail from here. And what's nice is you can, once you've got your database up, it's very easy to connect it into your environments from there. It does have an API layer too, which is kind of cool. So if you're doing API stuff, you don't actually have to connect directly to the database, but pretty cool stuff. So check it out. It's bit.io. I don't get paid anything. I just found it was easy for putting together a real quick database for testing, development, and other things along those lines. So check it out. And again, since it's Postgres, worked great with Alpha. I've found no problems, no issue. It's lightning fast. It is super cool. Oh, one thing I do think, which is really cool, which they just announced it, which is pretty neat, is, and I'm sorry, again, I don't mean to be selling, but this is a very cool feature. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Hold on a second here. Okay, what they now offer, which is very cool, and this is why Postgres is really cool, is it's called a read-only distributed database. So basically what it allows you to do, and let me see if I can run down here, is that if you buy the upgraded plan, what it will do is it will, actually, let me go to, I'm sorry, I apologize. I really want to show you this because it's kind of cool. And I'll go to somewhere where it will go just there. They have read-only, where is it? It auto scales, which is cool. Oh yeah, right here. So what they do is they basically take a copy of your database and distribute it around the world on other data centers. And so you do have to think about your data, if you have data protection issues, things like that. But then it creates read-only records because, most of the time people are just reading data, and it's a kind of a Postgres thing. So now what you can do is it's got databases that are super close to you physically, and therefore it does it all automatically. So when you do queries against it, instead of having to go all the way to your central data center where they set it up originally, it's distributed around the world. So it's got some pretty cool capabilities built into it. So I just wanted to share that from there. And as you can see, you can get, it's all zero config, meaning you just say, hey, I need it distributed. They do all the work, so you don't have to set everything up from there. Okay, so enough about that. So I've set that up there, and actually I want to go, I want to exit that. I want to go in here, and we'll go into the task list, and I just want to check something real quick. This is my list control where we have those core tasks on it, and and really this is using right now bit.io. Okay, so we developed our application. We used SQL Light to get it going, just to make life simple. Everything was there. Then I said, okay, I'm ready to kind of play in the big leagues. So I moved it over to bit.io. Took me maybe 10 minutes to get everything set up, reconfigured, set to go. Very simple stuff. Everything worked great. So now I have my question. How am I going to distribute this app? So let me jump back to my here, and let's jump down here. So when you have deployment for your application, you have 3 capabilities within Alpha to get your app to market. The first is just deploy it on an Alpha server, say Alpha Cloud, and then allow them to hit your app through the web browser. Works good, works great. I mean, it just works. It is responsive in nature. So if you're on a phone, it'll reorient it to make it look good on a phone. If you're on a desktop, it works fine on a desktop from there. That is your simplest. You just basically set it and forget it. You just publish it up. It's up on an app. You can open up that app and it's good to go. And I'll show you that in a few moments there. Your second option, and actually this is more, I should say, let me do this, because in terms of effort level, your second option is AlphaLaunch. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. But then your third option is to create a dedicated application. And Alpha has the ability to export all of the capabilities to a format that can be compiled and put into the App Store. So you can literally take an Alpha app and turn it into an app you can download from the app stores very readily. It is more work. You have to kind of get to know how to go through that process. You have to sign up for the app stores. They have, certain fees to be on there. So, there's a little education, but once you've done it, it's kind of a point and click kind of step by step process. And we have many Alpha customers who have deployed custom applications based on our technology that are running day in, day out. The beauty of that is that it allows you full access to the device. So all of the capabilities you want on that device, including your own custom capabilities to touch the hardware and do other things like that, are available within there. But obviously, to go from here to here is a big jump. There's a lot more work. This takes 5 minutes, 3 minutes. This takes a little bit more effort and more logistics to go to it. So Alpha came up with a great tool called AlphaLaunch, which is kind of like, I'm going to call it the mama bear sort of Goldilocks solution. So what AlphaLaunch is a shell application that Alpha has already built and does not charge for, and they have placed this shell application on the application stores for you. And this shell application has certain capabilities built into it, such as the ability to touch the location data, et cetera. So there's a certain set of sort of hardware specific capabilities that are in it. And what you can do is publish and download into this shell application, which is a process I'll show you in a little bit, your own app. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. Now, there is an issue of you have Alpha branding. So if you are like, you need white labeling, you have two options. One is you can go full app, or you can talk to the Alpha team. They have a way of taking AlphaLaunch and white brand or white listing it, white labeling it very quickly so that you can get rid of all the Alpha. You can have your own icon. We have a number of customers that are doing that, but you gain all the capability of being able to deploy multiple apps. And that's the cool thing too, is that you can have multiple apps in your AlphaLaunch. You're not limited to a single app. As many as you want, you can put on there, which is very nice. And the deployment is basically publish the app to the server, then you can download it on AlphaLaunch, takes away all the sort of the friction for getting your app out to your users from that standpoint there. So that's AlphaLaunch. And the cool thing is that it's a native shell application, meaning there's an iOS and an Android version. It is maintained by the Alpha team. So they make sure that the latest updates, everything else is on there. It has the ability to dynamically load applications, meaning you can load it and then you can create an app, they can download it, start using it, boom, boom, boom. It is also really nice because it is fully offline capable. One thing that's really cool about it is since it is a native app, it has access to the file system. A web browser on a mobile device does not have access to the native file system. It does have its own storage and other things, and that keeps getting better. But if you have a larger data set, you're going to have a harder time in a web deployed mobile app or web browser, more offline capable. And also, as I mentioned, you have access to the hardware features, things like, the GPS, the location data, the files.
Barcode scanning.
Yeah, barcode scanning. I mean, a huge one for that, because that's mobile apps don't like those, or I'm sorry, web browser apps don't like it. So really nice kind of Goldilocks between them. And as you'll see in a few minutes, it's not very hard to do this. It's actually, once you've gone through it a couple times, you can do it in your sleep, and you can do things very quickly. When you go to update an app now, you don't have to go through the full dedicated app to redeploy it. You can just redeploy it to AlphaLaunch. It will download the latest version into AlphaLaunch, and your users will have the latest and greatest app. And there's a whole process in there built, which is very cool, where you can number your app versions and you can actually roll back versions and other things like that. So it's from a DevOps standpoint, it makes your life really, really simple. And really, I think the only sticking part we have really with people from going from just web browser based to shell is that if there's an issue regarding the branding where they have to have their own branding, but that's again can be solved by the Alpha team. So it's pretty cool there. So what I want to talk about for the next few minutes is kind of what is the process and how does it work? And then I'm going to show you how I actually went through and deployed this to a AlphaLaunch solution. So, oh, by the way, just to let you know, I'm going to go to, where is it? Here is the this is the App Store. And this is the AlphaLaunch for iOS, for Mac. And you can see it's just, it's like any other app you would get on there. You go find it on the App Store, download it. It's got all the things. You just boom, boom. Now it's on your air. And when you load it up, then you set up what server you're talking to, and you're off the races. And what's kind of cool too is AlphaLaunch actually has some off-the-shelf apps you can download, demonstration apps, just to show people how it is. So it's pretty cool stuff. And the team does it. They have really, they don't have to modify it a whole lot because things don't change from the, for last year. I mean, there's few enhancements happen, but they keep it up to date, and you don't have to worry about that for yourself there. Okay, so let's talk about, again, how I deployed it. What does that mean? So before, in our last few things, this was my environment here. I had the browser device, the Alpha Anywhere Suite SQL Light. In my new one, I basically have the browser device, Alpha Cloud, and BitIO. So I'm using a combination of Alpha Cloud to host my application, and that's really simple to set up. And then I'm going to use AlphaLaunch to actually have the mobile app to be able to talk to it. And as I mentioned, when I had SQL Light, again, I don't want to have everybody have their own SQL Light. I want a central database. Also, when you update it, it may overwrite. So what I really wanted to do was create and use sort of an industrial string solution, which was the BitIO from that standpoint there. So how does this work? So let me walk you through this kind of, I hope it's not confusing, but basically how you work with it is you have your development environment, your server environment, and then your client environment. So I want to give you an overview before we get into the mechanics, then we'll go through the mechanics, and that hopefully will pull the pieces all together. So first, from a development standpoint, you're doing your development on your local system. You have your project files here. You can connect either a SQLite or the database, whatever you happen to do. It's really up to you. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do a twofold step, and it's all built into the same environment. So it's pretty simple. So first, you're going to deploy your application to Alpha Cloud or a dedicated Alpha server. You don't have to use Alpha Cloud. It's nice, easy, makes life simple, get rid of maintaining servers, but you can use your own server, which is fine. So basically, you're pushing up to the server the files so that your app can talk to it and then talk to the database from there, because there's sort of two parts to any application. There's the application that runs on the server that talks to the database, does all the back end stuff. And then there's your client, either the web browser or AlphaLaunch or a dedicated app that is on the client side that talks to the server and to the application running on the server to get the data and do the other pieces there. And so basically your first step is to deploy it up to there. And you got to do that first, because then the next step is you're going to prepare AlphaLaunch, because basically what Alpha does is it takes your Alpha information, it puts it onto an S3 bucket, either yours or theirs, and then that information is now available to AlphaLaunch to bring down to have your app run local. And so basically there's two steps. One is publish your application to Alpha Cloud or your server. Secondly, then prepare the AlphaLaunch files, put them up at an accessible server location, and then that can be then downloaded to AlphaLaunch, where it'll take these application files, download them, and then connect to the server, and then it will have its own data files. It will use, actually, it will own, this data files is like if you have extra things like images and everything else that is needed by the app, that's all brought down together. But then it talks to the database through the server to actually do its job. So again, step one, get it up on your server or Alpha Cloud. Step two, prepare and put your things on to a S3 bucket that can then be used to download to your AlphaLaunch. You're ready to go. And the beauty of this is there are very simple control panels I'm going to show you that walk you through these steps. Going to the application, go to the S3 bucket. So if you have any questions on that, let me know in terms of how that works. Again, you'll need your application server that hosts it, either yours or Alpha Cloud, and then AlphaLaunch. You can download your to your phone directly from the App Store. There's no charge. It's provided by Alpha to be able to do that from that standpoint. So if that's good, then I'm going to walk you through the steps on how I do this and show you a little bit more. But also do a sound check, make sure good to go there.
Everything's good, audio and visual wise.
Good, good. No, it's pretty straight. And it will become a little more clear as I walk you through publishing process. So, okay.
We did have one quick question
Oh,
though, on
yes,
AlphaLaunch,
please.
and that was, what would happen if you deployed a desktop web, in other words, a web application to AlphaLaunch? Would it work, just not be optimized for mobile? And just if I can jump
Yeah,
in and answer that, if it's built with UX components, you can do it
correct.
in AlphaLaunch. And if you've used grids and some other things that you might have done on desktop web, they are not going to work in AlphaLaunch. You're going to need to do them as a UX component. But it is possible, certainly, build an application that works both in AlphaLaunch and works on the web using the same code base and the same components, as long as you stick with UXs.
Yeah, and to be honest, often I find there are kind of two types of users for Alpha solutions that I've built personally. Is there's like the back office people. They can do everything through a web browser. They're online all the time. They want the bigger screen, the other elements there. They don't need offline capability. And then there's your field users, salespeople, technicians, people in mines, all range of it, where they need to have a local offline capability. And that's the real magic. Or they need to have those facilities of barcode scanning and other things along those lines. Like for someone that is at a desk using their desktop, they can just buy a plug into their keyboard with a scanner to scan QR codes and barcodes and stuff like that. So they don't really need all that capability, but your field users need that all on the phone itself and access. So you can kind of mix and match, which is really cool. You can do both offline or you can do both, web deploy for your back office and people out in the field. And if people out in the field don't need all those capabilities, you can just use the web browser out in the field. Pretty easy stuff to go from there. Cool, thank you.
Terrific.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I've set up my application and I need to first set it up on the Alpha Cloud. So I went through and created, and I'll just open this profile up here. Come on, there we go. I created an Alpha Cloud solution. I set up my connection strings and I set them up to that Postgres because they'll be used out there. And I'm not going to go through every step, but I want to kind of show you where for the publishing to Alpha Cloud, there's a whole series of great walkthroughs on how to do it. Is basically, I use the Alpha Cloud environment to set up a deployment. So I have a subscription that I use for demos and other pieces there. I created an application that tells Alpha Cloud sort of the highest level thing is an application. And then I created what's called a deployment, which deployed it to a deployment is sort of like, okay, what version of Alpha do I want? What website do I want to publish users and roles and what kind of logging do I do? So let me look at this real quick, because along with this, I also created a URL website for this application. So again, I'm not going to go into the details here. It's fairly straightforward. As you set up a deployment, you tell it, what URL you're going to use. You tell it some other things about storage and paths, etc. And then it sets up. And this is basically your publishing capability up to the server. So if I go back in here and actually you can see the actual there, I went ahead and deployed this and made sure from a web browser, basically, make sure it's back up and running. I did publish it. Didn't check it this morning, Pat. So you can see now, notice that it's responsive. So I'm actually seeing this on my web browser and it will reorient itself based on being on a phone. So again, it's responding, it's live up on the server and it's working from that sound. Oop, went to the wrong one there. From there, you can trap that, stop it from happening in the future. And I had that capability. So that was step one, was deploying that to my server. So as I mentioned, I took this information, I created an app on Alpha Cloud, published it, pointing to the database, and then everything was working. And that's important because Alpha Cloud needs that information to properly deploy to AlphaLaunch. So it is a two-step process. Make sure your app is up there, test it, run it, make sure it's looking okay. Then once you're done with that, now you can move on to the Alpha Cloud step to actually create and deploy your Alpha Cloud. So we'll walk through that next. So again, step one, get your Alpha Cloud, make sure it's working okay, publish it there, you're good to go. Okay, now we're ready to use Alpha Cloud. Now again, as I mentioned, Alpha likes to make your life easier. I like Alpha making my life easier. It's really nice. So if I go into my development environment, I go up here to the More button, you will see there's a button here or a menu item called AlphaLaunch. And you can see there's something that says Publish Apps to AlphaLaunch. So I click there and it brings it up here. Now, originally this was empty, i.e. when I came up here, it said, you're good to go. Now, this is an important concept. When you deploy a component, you're not deploying web pages, you are deploying a UX. So usually you have a main UX, which is the top level of your app, and then you can dynamically load UXs into that or have them embedded, etc. But your first step is to pick what is that primary UX that you want to be when it's on AlphaLaunch. So when AlphaLaunch goes to your app, when you use the actual app on AlphaLaunch App, it will actually load up that UX and then everything else happens from there. So in our demonstration, I had created a UX called Task, Webinar, Mobile, UX. That's where we did all our development. That's where our list control, everything else. And then I went over here and I said add component and I selected that and added it to here. Now that's step one. Is so first you got to decide, okay, which is my primary UX for the person out in the field? And usually you have a single UX that has a list control, other things along those lines. You can add more components and that would allow you to do other things. So you could actually have multiple apps on there in the same project, but for now we're going to keep it very, very simple. Now, once you've done that, you will see that it's going to say, it's going to be red right here instead of blue. And it says settings not defined. So what you need to do is once you see that red right there, you go here to edit component set. And this is a critical step. It's not obvious, is that you have to set your settings before you publish it to AlphaLaunch. So you select your UX and you click here. So up here now you'll see that it gives you this is what basically is going to help you drive. Oops, right there. Actually, it's over here. There it is, okay. This information here, like, what's your icon, what's the name, what's the description, what's your version number, etc. information here. You define that here in the AlphaLaunch settings. So you give your app a unique ID because every app has to have a unique ID on the phone, otherwise it might step on each other. You give it a name, you can add that description. You also give it a version number. And this is very important because the cool thing with the version number is that you can roll back and do other things like that. So when you add new version numbers, AlphaLaunch will automatically detect that and say, oh, there's a new version available. There's some really nice features put in from a DevOps standpoint for the team. There's also things like an install message that tells them what it is, how to install it. Here you can go into advanced mode. For instance, what is the background color and icon that you're going to use for your app? So think of this as almost kind of like your branding exercise right here. You can put an icon, you can select your icon, you can put a background color, you can do advanced mode, which adding a lot more flair to it from that standpoint there. So you set you select your UX, you select your properties, making sure to set up your version. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and put in 2 since we're going to do a fun. Then down here, and this is another important thing here. So you have 2 options in download type. And let me explain that a little bit. When you first create this, you're going to see manifest. And that works pretty good. Basically, what this is telling AlphaLaunch is how do you download all of this application into the AlphaLaunch app running on the phone? And manifest was the original way. Basically, what it does is that it creates I think it's an XML file, but it could be JSON file that lists all the different files that need to come down onto the system. So as we mentioned before, basically when you publish all those files up here, AlphaLaunch is going to grab this and bring it down. Well, what files you bring down is dictated by that manifest. So when AlphaLaunch, it says, oh, you want this app? Oh, okay, if it's manifest, I have this list of it. So it'll call this server and bring them down. Now, the downside of manifest, and we ran into some problems earlier on, is that it has to download each file individually. And there could be hundreds of files that come down the more complex you get. So when you first come in here, it says manifest because that just works. But there's one here called single with header, which I highly recommend you use. And so what that allows you to do, and sorry, let me turn focus mode on here. So the benefit of this single with header is that it allows you to create, it basically downloads a single big file. So there's a header file that tells what's in it. It downloads it, and it does two things. It's a much more reliable download, and it's much faster because you're not calling the server over and over and over again. You're basically just bringing down a single file. It unzips it there, and you're ready to go. So that's pretty cool from that sound. Let me, I have to send something back to that person. So I'm going to do it. I apologize. Okay, good. Let them know that. So put your information about your app here. The version number, very important. Feel free to modify the bitmap, the color, etc. Put the download type as single with header, and you're good to go. So now you'll notice once you've done that, that turns into a blue from that, and it says settings has been designed. So select the UX, edit the component settings, and then we're ready to click Publish Apps to AlphaLaunch. Okay, so when you first come in here, it's going to ask you which publishing profile are you going to use. So basically, now that we've got in here, basically you have the S3, you've told it, okay, how I want to bundle this stuff and put up here. You've also told it here, you kind of have to tell AlphaLaunch when it downloads this information, the information about the server in which you are going to run against. Because AlphaLaunch will run these files and then it will say, oh, where should I call, kind of like a configuration file to get my back end to be able to use that. So the next key step here is to define which publishing profile you are going to use. So for instance, I set up my publishing profile. Let me cancel out of here and go right back here. So in Alpha Cloud, I click Publish, Default, and this is my publishing profile. So this is what I use to publish over to the other system. Hold on a second. Got it. Okay. But so I remember that. I can go back here and remember when you tell it, it'd be very bad to say local, because unless this had a way to get to a local server on your development machine, you're really going to want to go to your application. That's why I set up that publishing first. So let's go back in here. Let's go to More, AlphaLaunch, Publish Apps. Okay, there. So I selected, okay, I want to use default. And I probably should have named that a little better. Instead of default, I should have said Alpha Cloud, Development, Publish, etc. I was just in a curry when I did that. Okay, now what's important is remember when I published that using there, it gave me a URL to my server because Alpha Cloud set that up. And it has a lot of information in here. You can check to see if the application has been deployed. It'll take a moment to go over there and make sure everything's good. It can actually explain on that, so it's all good. So if you haven't done that, it's going to warn you. You're going to have to go back and do the publishing and then this. So what this is doing is saying, okay, here's the profile. So it has all the things like AlphaDAO, connection strings, etc. It tells it where to go to the server. So when this is running, it's going to say, oh, I need to go talk to the server. It knows the URL of my application that I've deployed and be able to use that from there. You can also click Show a QR code, which will tell you how to get to this server. And basically, this has a lot of information in here. So the nice thing is with this QR code, you can just scan it and show it. The person can use their phone in the AlphaLaunch application to be able to do that. Now, the last thing, and this is super duper duper important, is use Amazon S3 as download site. I highly recommend you use this. If you don't click on this, what happens is that when Alpha Cloud puts it, you have to, and this is an option, by the way, this is good news, bad news. The good news is that Alpha will automatically deploy an S3 bucket for you, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. Bad news is this is an S3 bucket with other people's stuff on it. You may not like that. So the other option is use Alpha Cloud to actually put these application files here on your server, and AlphaLaunch can pull it down from here. Now, that does work fine. You can use that. But to make life easier, just click Use Amazon S3, and they'll do all that stuff for you. So it takes care, creates the idea, the bucket, everything else from there. Super duper simple. But again, you can turn this on to when you're doing your initial testing, quick and dirty, or you can turn it off and it will publish it to your server and be able to download there. But I use this because I want to make my life easier. Off to the race. So I click OK. What it's going to do now is it's going to grab all my files in my local system. It's going to take all that header information, configuration information, create my file sets, etc. It's going to then migrate that information up to that S3 bucket. And then you'll see it in a moment. It takes a moment. Depends on how big your file is. Give it a moment. Okay, so files have been prepared and ready to go. And again, if you get bored of these kind of messages, you can click and turn them off. So it's saying it's taken all these files here and it's compiled them into a set of files that are ready to go up to this S3 bucket. So now I can say, okay. So now it's going to take those files. It's calling S3. It's putting them up there. You'll notice there's a bunch of, it puts together a lot of other files that are needed to run that you don't have to worry about. AlphaLaunch takes care of all that information that's used by the mobile device. I apologize, my server's a little slow because I've got a bunch of stuff on. I gotta upgrade my server. It's a little too slow. It is nice. Well, this is like watching paint dry. We need the yeah, we need the Jeopardy music here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Again, it's it's starting to move. It's like the first part, I guess.
Question maybe you can answer while I'm doing this. Now it's going to fly right by and we won't have time for that question. But yeah,
you've got 60%.
But you had mentioned that one of the advantages of AlphaLaunch is your ability to roll back. You've added some feature or something and it broke everything, and now you need to go back to an earlier version. And the advantage is you don't have to have anyone update the software on their phone. It's just next time they open it up, they can go to a different version. Is that pretty much?
That is correct.
Okay.
And what's really cool, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
And what's cool is there's actually built-in functions, so you can actually give them the option to upgrade. So there's some, it can auto upgrade, or you can give them a feature that will say, okay, reload my current app. Like, we've got the version 2.0, click here, pay Stripe and download it. So.
Cool.
Okay. So what's going on here is that it is, you'll notice now that it's got a different link it's created, because what it's doing at this point is that for this to work, it is actually redeploying a sort of special version of Alpha Cloud here, of your app on Alpha Cloud, and at the same time deploying, created all this into the S3 bucket, because I don't know why, but it's a bunch of magic that goes on there. So you'll see it's updating and redeploying to Alpha Cloud for me automatically. I didn't have to do it. The reason I say deploy that once is you need that URL, because then it uses that URL for the rest of the information here. Okay, so it has gone ahead and published my app to there. Now it's publishing these things to S3. They should go very quick here. And now it's done. So it did that sort of, and every time you do this, to make sure your server's in sync with your files on your AlphaLaunch, it will take care of all this for you. So now your update of a publication is just change the version number, click publish in AlphaLaunch. It will take care of publishing both your server and your local, and you're ready to go. And you can click on this. It'll actually, what it did is it called the server. It knows it's saying, okay, it pulled back this information that is sort of their configuration data that's used by the AlphaLaunch from there. And I'm good to go from there. So now let me go to AlphaLaunch. Let's see. So now people can just scan this, and basically you can create an instruction page. You go into Alpha Cloud. You scan this, it will create a server. And I apologize, I don't have the ability to show it on my phone, but the app is now on my local Alpha Cloud. It connects to bit.io, it connects to the server, and it runs. So I apologize, it's kind of anticlimactic, but basically you then launch Alpha Cloud, you scan that QR code, that will allow you to connect to the server. It will say, oh, here's an app. And again, you can have more than one app on there, and then you download that app and boom, you're off to the races from there. And if you have things like security and everything else, all of that works. Everything that you can do on a web-based app works fine in working on Alpha Cloud and really more importantly, AlphaLaunch. But what's important about it is that it then allows you to download multiple apps. It has access to the hardware and the other pieces there. So I know it's a bit anticlimactic, but as you can see, it's a very straightforward process. Set up, get your app working great, publish it to Alpha Cloud, then or your own server. It's up to you. Alpha Cloud make life easier. Then you add the UX, edit the component sections, and then you publish it. You make sure the server URL is set up. You tell it what publishing profile is. You tell it to use Amazon S3 most likely. Hit go, and it does the rest for you. It is super nice. And just to let you know, there is a great webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and put this into the chat window that it goes through the whole Alpha launch in a much more detail. I kind of did it at a higher level, but I wanted to make sure that's the documentation. And this is a great webinar that Sarah did to walk you through all the pieces from there.
Excellent. So,
good. Yeah. So,
question for you. Yeah, and that is the S3 account. Okay, the manifest file and stuff are pushed up to an S3 account. The question that was asked is, does a developer need to have their own S3 account in order to do this? And the answer
that's a great question, and the answer is no. Alpha provides that as a free service to support your AlphaLaunch applications. Again, it's kind of a public, it's not public, but it is, you can't, it's not a secure environment, from the standpoint of, your files are there.
So
you do have the option.
Gobbledygook file name, it would be possible for them to download it from our bucket.
Yeah, an experienced hacker could probably find that information there.
Your own bucket too. Yep.
Yep, you can do your own S3, you can upload it onto your own application server, many different ways to do it if you want a higher security capability on there. Great question.
And then the other one was, next question, just to confirm, AlphaLaunch supports a fully disconnected application and all the features available with Alpha software, such as mapping and things like that.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, yeah, definitely. Although mapping is supported only to a certain extent disconnected, because often that's pulling server data. So that's
from Google.
But it's still the stuff you could do in Alpha anywhere. You can still do in AlphaLaunch. And we've included most of the plugins that you would probably ever need to use. Again, if there are plugins in AlphaLaunch, we do look at adding them. Things like Bluetooth and stuff we're going to probably add for the next go round, which is currently in the works. But things like barcode scanning and camera access and all kinds of other things, audio, video recording, that's all included in AlphaLaunch.
Great question.
Let's see what else we got here. Someone said, I never got AlphaLaunch to work. Maybe it's because I used a grid control. That's the answer right there.
That could be. Yeah.
Yep.
I had a DBF file I was uploading.
Here's a good question. How does the end user add the app to their AlphaLaunch app?
Okay. So what happens is when you open AlphaLaunch, you scan that image, and that will add. Let me go to here. And if you want, I'll leave this open. I can't guarantee everything's where I haven't fully, but.
Are you saying you're going to do something that's untested?
Oh, completely. That's my middle name.
This is our trademark.
Yeah, indeed. So this tells you, and what's cool is you can create an instruction page and actually email it to people that walk them through, that includes the QR code and stuff. It's very straightforward. So the first step is you go to settings in AlphaLaunch, because what it is this is kind of an interesting, I'll bring this back up real quick, but AlphaLaunch can talk to my S3 bucket, but it could talk to other servers. I'm not just limited to one. It's very flexible. And so the idea is this first QR code tells AlphaLaunch, hey, there's a server out here, and on this server are a bunch of apps that you can access. And so then you scan that and it adds a server address. Then once you've added that, then you can click Manage Add, and it will give you a list of apps, and then you can add that list, add that app, it'll download it, and then you can start using it. So it's really pretty cool from that standpoint there. So again, this QR code basically tells them where it tells AlphaLaunch where the server is. And so you can just use your camera like you're at the, at getting a menu at a restaurant, and it will say, oh, okay, you have to use this not on your camera, but inside the AlphaLaunch app. The AlphaLaunch app uses the camera to read this, but then it takes care of setting it up inside of AlphaLaunch. Then you can say, okay, manage ad, and you can pick at one or more apps, download it to AlphaLaunch, and you're off to the races.
Cool. So now this is already published. Can people point their alpha?
Go for it. Try it. Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So I've got it open on my phone right now. I'm not going to share my screen just yet, but it says message from server, sample message, and I see an app called Webinar Task Manager. So if any of you have AlphaLaunch, if you've installed it and you want to set the server to that, it looks like that's there. So I'm going to click install. Okay. Oh my gosh. Hang on, let me see if I can share my screen. It's working like a charm. Okay. Close this.
I stopped sharing mine.
Thank you.
I had a choice.
Hang on, let me run air server real quick. I didn't gotta have that running, otherwise I won't see my phone. Okay. Now what we'll do is move this out of here, cancel. Okay, sharing. Let's see if we can get this to work. Oops, wrong network. All right, give me 1 minute here.
No problem.
Correct network. It's got to be the
It's
same.
not like we have more important things to be doing while you're messing around there, Dave.
Sorry. Hey, someone just said that worked.
Someone said, "Hey, can you show well-oiled machine you're watching, everybody? This is like Hollywood level production." Here, you doing that or am I doing that? I forget.
Hold on. What's okay? Hang on. Let me just open up preview real quick. Someone would like to see that QR code again, so I'm going to just.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and show my screen. There you go.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah.
Share. I'm head of an evil organization. Don't share.
Share. All right, let's see if I can get screen mirroring. Come on. Oh, this looks like it's looking promising. Okay, I just need to do nice. Come on, I'm gonna make myself the presenter. Make presenter. Show my screen. All right.
All right. I'm seeing your screen. Your cows.
You should be seeing some cows, and you
I
should
see some cows.
There's screen mirroring on it, which is cool. So I'm going to go to AlphaLaunch, and there's AlphaLaunch. But you know what? I just realized something. You made a cardinal error when building an AlphaLaunch.
Oh yeah, it's not programmatic, is it?
No. You did not put in an exit button. That's the one thing you always have to do when you put on an AlphaLaunch app. There's an exit button. And maybe we want to.
Hey, you didn't pay for an exit button. It was not in the specification. Next time you put it in the spec, it will be in the app. But yeah.
So I'm opening AlphaLaunch as if it were fresh. Okay, and I already had that in there, but I'm going to say.
And you notice I don't have like a logo and everything else. It's like. Yeah.
And there I have. Well, let me just say add. Okay, and what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go back and set the server.
Oh, while you're doing that, I'm going to upgrade the app. I'm not going to add the thing, but I'm going to go ahead and redeploy it for you real quick. So
perfect.
Yeah.
So server. Okay, so here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a server from my server list, add, and then down here I can just say, oops, I could type in the URL, but I can use scan, which is what I'm going to do. So there's scan. Of course, I'm missing the QR code. Okay, preview. Okay, cancel. From clipboard. All right, there's my code. I'm gonna grab that. It's filled in. I've scanned it. I'm sorry. Scan it again.
So while you're doing that, sorry. Yep.
So there it is. There's your Alpha Cloud server. When I click on Alpha Cloud, what it's going to do, when I click add, it's going to, oops.
Yeah.
Select select, and go back again, and this time I can manage and add my applications. You'll see Webinar Task Manager is there, so I would tap on that. I would click Add, and it's already there, so here it is. And now I'm going to tap on it again. App already installed. I'm going to say, okay, update it, and you'll see it's grabbing all those files.
Notice it was auto update, although you can make that manual if you want.
And there's the here's my app, and there it is. Very cool.
Yeah, and as you can see, now it's like almost a native app, so it really is better. You know, it's fast and stuff like that. And I get an exit button, I'll be in there, ready to go.
Cool. So I'm going to make you presenter again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, this may take a moment, and we may run out of time. But what I did is I went ahead and modified my app, and then I changed the version to 1.03.
Yeah.
And actually, if you could reshare your screen again, I think we already kind of saw it, but we could show how the system will automatically look at that new version, which is great because now you can keep your people in the field up to date with any breaking change. They're not required to do a whole bunch of work and stuff like that. Makes life a lot easier.
All right. Open up launch again.
Yeah.
And then
sloppy.
You're gonna have me update this, huh? Oops, except without that exit button.
Yeah.
Actually, have to force close the app.
Hard exit.
Yes. You can add an exit button to your app. I believe there's even a action JavaScript
yes
action for it for closing out of AlphaLaunch, and that's make sure you do that. Otherwise, you're always.
And by the way, it's still publishing, so just give it another minute. It's just finishing up going to the cloud. So bear with me. If there's other questions while we're waiting, we don't want to delay stuff. But as you can see, I mean, once you got it set up,
look. I bet there are.
It's like click and go. It's really simple to keep your apps up to date, and the users are going to get a very nice experience. And if you need white labeling, again, there's Alpha has a very reasonable method. And then you get all the power of Alpha. You can crank out these apps, and more than one. There's no cost per app, or per app to download and put on Alpha Cloud or AlphaLaunch. Excuse me.
AlphaLaunch just comes free when you have Alpha, so it's not even a exactly nothing special there.
I do suggest using.
How are we doing on publishing?
Okay. Yep. It's done. It's up there.
Is it really? Okay. So I'm gonna go. I'm here now. Yeah. So I'm gonna go manage ad, and I'm gonna say. I wonder if I can just delete this one here. I forget how I do that, but I'm gonna say add. Okay.
See.
This.
Look. There's my message.
Version
Davis.
Special. Oh, I am special. Thank you.
There you are. Yeah. And you know what?
You made my day.
And special in the way I really mean it.
we won't
now notice how fast this is downloading. This takes a lot longer if you don't use that. If you use Manifest, this will be slower. Yeah. So.
Oh, this is flying.
Yeah.
God. There it is. It's updated. Oh, look at this on Davis Special. That is very
know.
Cool. So you've pushed out this new update. Anyone else who had their phone could then update to the new version as well.
And then go in and you'll see that was just the titling stuff.
Oh, there's more.
There you go. See the header I was able to make header change.
Very nice.
Dave, no other changes, but
no, cool. Well, it's, as you pointed out, I didn't pay for an exit button, but do add an exit button to your apps.
Exactly. So. You didn't even pay for Dave, but I threw that in for free.
Hey, Dean, it looks like we're out of time. Also out of questions, conveniently enough. Thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Love having you present. Thank you, everyone, for showing up and asking questions. If you do have more, send them over to guides, GUIDES, @alphasoftware.com. We hope to see you at next Wednesday's webinar. Until then, take care and stay well. Bye-bye.